The morning sun cast long shadows across the perfectly manicured gardens of Kensington Palace. Prince Louis, barely 4 years old, walked beside his nanny through the rose garden, his small hand gripping a wooden toy soldier. The little prince had been unusually quiet during their morning walk, something that worried Miss Sarah, his experienced caretaker who had worked with royal children for over 15 years. Security was tight that day. More guards than usual patrolled the grounds, their trained eyes scanning every corner, every bush, every potential hiding spot. Intelligence reports had come in the previous evening about possible threats to the royal family. Though the details remained classified, the security team wasn't taking any chances, especially with the younger royals. Detective Inspector James Morrison stood near the garden's main entrance, his earpiece crackling softly with updates from other security personnel positioned throughout the palace grounds. Morrison had been protecting the royal family for 12 years, and he knew that even the smallest unusual movement could signal danger. His eyes never stopped moving, constantly assessing, constantly watching. Prince Louis suddenly stopped walking and pointed toward a cluster of white roses near the garden's ornate fountain. "Look, Miss Sarah. The pretty white flowers are dancing," he said in his sweet, innocent voice. His nanny followed his gaze but saw nothing unusual, just the gentle breeze moving the rose petals. What Miss Sarah didn't notice was the slight rustling in the hedgerow about 20 feet away from where they stood. The movement was subtle, almost invisible to the untrained eye, but Detective Inspector Morrison caught it immediately. His hand instinctively moved toward his radio, and his body tensed as he began moving closer to the prince and his nanny. Prince Louis, completely unaware of any potential danger, continued chattering about the dancing flowers. He dropped his toy soldier and began to chase a butterfly that had landed on one of the roses. His small legs carried him toward the fountain, his laughter echoing through the quiet morning air. The rustling in the hedgerow became more pronounced. Morrison could see the outline of someone crouched behind the thick green bushes. His training kicked in immediately. He spoke quietly into his radio, alerting the other security personnel of a possible intruder in the garden. Within seconds, the peaceful morning atmosphere transformed into a scene of heightened alert. Prince Louis bent down to pick up his dropped toy soldier, which had rolled near the fountain's edge. As he straightened up, something caught his attention in the distance. Through the gaps in the rose bushes, he could see a man dressed in dark clothing, partially hidden but clearly watching him. The little prince, with the innocent curiosity of a child, raised his hand slightly in what appeared to be a small wave toward the stranger. The moment Prince Louis's hand went up, Detective Inspector Morrison's heart raced. From his position, he could see both the prince and the figure in the bushes. The way the stranger was positioned, the way he seemed to be watching the young royal, and the timing of the prince's gesture all created a potentially dangerous situation. Morrison immediately began running toward Prince Louis, his hand reaching for his service weapon. At the same time, he barked orders through his radio for immediate backup and for all exits to be sealed. The other guards, stationed at various points around the garden, responded instantly to his urgent commands. The figure in the bushes suddenly stood up, revealing himself more clearly. He was a middle-aged man with unkempt hair and wearing clothes that were dirty and wrinkled. In his hand, he clutched what appeared to be a camera with a large telephoto lens. The moment he realized he had been spotted, panic crossed his face. Prince Louis, still unaware of the drama unfolding around him, continued to wave his small hand toward the stranger. In his innocent mind, he was simply being polite to someone he had noticed watching him. Miss Sarah, finally realizing something was wrong when she heard Detective Inspector Morrison shouting commands, quickly moved to position herself between the prince and the potential threat. The stranger in the bushes began to move, pushing his way through the thick hedgerow in an apparent attempt to escape. The sound of breaking branches and rustling leaves filled the air as he struggled to get away. Detective Inspector Morrison was now running at full speed toward Prince Louis, his years of training and protective instincts driving him forward. Other security personnel converged on the scene from multiple directions. The palace grounds, which had been peaceful just moments before, now buzzed with activity as trained professionals moved to neutralize what they perceived as a potential threat to the young prince. Miss Sarah scooped up Prince Louis in her arms, holding him close as she quickly moved away from the fountain and toward the palace entrance. The little prince, confused by the sudden change in atmosphere, began to cry softly. He didn't understand why his peaceful morning walk had suddenly become so chaotic and frightening. The man in the bushes finally broke free from the hedgerow and began running across the open lawn toward the palace's outer perimeter. Detective Inspector Morrison, still pursuing, could now see clearly that the man was indeed carrying professional photography equipment. This realization added a new dimension to the situation. Was this an overly aggressive photographer trying to get unauthorized pictures of the young prince, or was there something more sinister to his presence? As the chase continued across the palace grounds, more pieces of the puzzle began to fall into place. The man appeared to be alone, and his desperate flight suggested someone who had been caught doing something he knew he shouldn't be doing, rather than someone with truly malicious intent. However, protocol demanded that every potential threat be taken seriously, especially when it involved the safety of a young member of the royal family. Prince Louis's simple, innocent gesture of raising his hand had set in motion a chain of events that would be discussed in security briefings for weeks to come. The little prince had no way of knowing that his polite wave toward a stranger would trigger such an immediate and intense response from the highly trained professionals whose job it was to keep him safe. The morning that had started so peacefully in the palace gardens had transformed into a security incident that would test the skills and response time of the royal protection team, all because a 4-year-old prince had noticed someone watching him and had responded with the natural friendliness that his parents had taught him to show toward others. Detective Inspector Morrison's feet pounded against the palace lawn as he pursued the fleeing stranger. His years of physical training served him well as he gained ground on the man, who was struggling to run while carrying his heavy camera equipment. Behind Morrison, other security officers spread out in a coordinated pattern, ensuring that no escape route would be left uncovered. The man stumbled as he reached the palace's outer gardens, where the formal landscaping gave way to more natural terrain. His camera bag swung wildly as he tried to maintain his balance, and Morrison could hear him breathing heavily even from several yards away. It was clear that the stranger was not in good physical condition and would not be able to maintain his pace much longer. Prince Louis, still in Miss Sarah's arms, watched the scene unfold from the safety of the palace steps. His tears had stopped, replaced by the natural curiosity of a young child witnessing something he had never seen before. "Why is everyone running, Miss Sarah?" he asked, his small voice filled with confusion. His nanny gently turned him away from the scene, trying to shield him from the dramatic events that his innocent wave had triggered. The pursuing officers began to close the distance. Morrison, leading the chase, could now see details about the stranger that had not been visible from his position in the garden. The man appeared to be in his 50s, with graying hair and a beard that looked like it hadn't been trimmed in weeks. His clothing was expensive but wrinkled and dirty, suggesting he had been hiding in the palace grounds for some time. As the man reached a small grove of oak trees near the palace's eastern wall, he finally stopped running. Breathing heavily and clearly exhausted, he turned to face his pursuers. Morrison immediately noticed that the man's hands were shaking, though whether from fear, exhaustion, or something else was not immediately clear. "Stop right there!" Morrison shouted, his weapon drawn but pointed at the ground. "Put down the camera and place your hands where I can see them." The other officers had now surrounded the grove, creating a secure perimeter that would prevent any further escape attempts. The stranger slowly placed his camera bag on the ground, his movements careful and deliberate. Morrison could see that the man was trying not to make any sudden movements that might be interpreted as threatening. As he straightened up, the man raised his hands above his head, his breathing still labored from the chase. "Please don't shoot," the man said, his voice hoarse and trembling. "I wasn't going to hurt anyone. I just wanted some pictures." Morrison approached cautiously, his training telling him to treat every suspect as potentially dangerous until proven otherwise. He kicked the camera bag away from the man and motioned for two other officers to search it for weapons or other threats. Officer Williams, a specialist in explosive detection, carefully examined the camera bag while Morrison kept his attention focused on the suspect. Inside the bag, Williams found professional photography equipment worth thousands of pounds, multiple telephoto lenses, and what appeared to be surveillance notes with detailed information about the royal family's daily routines. "What's your name?" Morrison demanded, still maintaining a safe distance from the suspect. The man hesitated for a moment before answering. "Marcus Thompson. I'm a freelance photographer." His voice carried a slight accent that Morrison couldn't immediately place, and there was something about his manner that suggested he was not telling the complete truth. Meanwhile, back at the palace, Miss Sarah had taken Prince Louis inside to the family's private quarters. The little prince was asking endless questions about what he had witnessed, his young mind trying to make sense of the morning's events. "Did I do something wrong when I waved?" he asked, his voice small and worried. Miss Sarah knelt down to his level, her experienced hands gentle on his shoulders. "No, sweetheart," she assured him. "You did nothing wrong. You were being polite, just as your mommy and daddy taught you. Sometimes grown-ups have to make sure everyone is safe, and that's what they were doing." Prince Louis nodded solemnly, though it was clear he didn't fully understand the complexities of royal security protocols. Back in the Grove, Officer Williams had made a disturbing discovery among Marcus Thompson's belongings. Hidden beneath the photography equipment were detailed floor plans of Kensington Palace, including areas that were supposed to be classified and known only to security personnel. There were also photographs of various members of the royal family taken from distances and angles that suggested unauthorized surveillance had been taking place for some time. Detective Inspector Morrison's expression grew more serious as he reviewed the evidence. "Mr. Thompson," he said formally, "you are under arrest on suspicion of stalking members of the royal family and unauthorized surveillance of royal property." As he began reading Thompson the standard caution, Morrison wondered how long this man had been watching the palace and what his ultimate intentions might have been. Thompson's shoulders sagged as the handcuffs clicked into place. "I never meant any harm," he repeated, his voice barely above a whisper. "I just needed the money. The newspapers pay good money for exclusive photos of the royal children." Morrison exchanged glances with Officer Williams, both men recognizing that they were likely dealing with an overzealous paparazzi photographer rather than a genuine security threat, but protocols still had to be followed. The investigation team began the careful process of cataloging all the evidence found in Thompson's possession. Each photograph would need to be analyzed to determine when and where it was taken, and the detailed notes about royal routines would require careful review to assess what information might have been compromised. Prince Louis's innocent wave had led to the discovery of what appeared to be an extensive, unauthorized surveillance operation. The little prince, playing quietly in the palace's security-monitored playroom, had no idea that his simple gesture of friendliness had potentially prevented a much more serious breach of royal privacy and security. As Thompson was led away to a waiting police vehicle, Detective Inspector Morrison couldn't help but reflect on how quickly a peaceful morning had transformed into a major security incident. The rapid response of the protection team had been textbook perfect, but it also highlighted the constant vigilance required to keep the royal family safe in an era of increasingly sophisticated threats and intrusions. The investigation was just beginning, but Morrison knew that Thompson's arrest would likely lead to a broader review of security protocols and surveillance detection procedures. Prince Louis's small raised hand had accomplished more than the 4-year-old could ever imagine, potentially protecting not just himself, but his entire family from ongoing unauthorized surveillance. The interrogation room at the local police station was stark and functional, designed to encourage honesty from those being questioned. Marcus Thompson sat across from Detective Inspector Morrison and Detective Sergeant Claire Edwards, his hands folded nervously in his lap. The camera equipment that had been confiscated from him was arranged on a nearby table, each piece tagged and cataloged as evidence. Thompson's story began to unfold slowly over the course of several hours. He revealed that he had been conducting unauthorized surveillance of the royal family for nearly 6 months, hiding in various locations around the palace grounds to capture candid photographs. His financial situation had become desperate after losing his regular job at a photography studio, and he had turned to selling pictures to tabloid newspapers as a way to pay his mounting debts. "I never intended to harm anyone," Thompson insisted for the 3rd time during the interview. "I just needed money to keep my flat. The newspapers pay thousands for good photos of the royal children, especially Prince Louis. He's so young and photogenic, and the public loves seeing pictures of him." Detective Inspector Morrison maintained his professional demeanor, but internally he felt disgust at the idea of someone exploiting a young child for profit. The investigation revealed that Thompson had been remarkably thorough in his surveillance activities. Hidden among his possessions were detailed schedules of when the royal children typically played in the gardens, when they went for walks with their nannies, and even information about which windows in the palace offered the best views of the family's private areas. The level of detail was disturbing and suggested that Thompson had been watching the family far longer than he initially admitted. Back at Kensington Palace, Prince Louis was having his afternoon snack with his siblings, Prince George and Princess Charlotte. The 3 children chatted about their morning activities, with Prince Louis excitedly telling his older brother and sister about the running game he had witnessed in the garden. His innocence about the true nature of what had occurred was both heartbreaking and reassuring to the adults who overheard his animated description. Prince William and Catherine were briefed about the incident by the head of royal security later that afternoon. Their concern was evident as they learned about the extent of Thompson's surveillance activities. As parents, they struggled with the balance between allowing their children to have normal, happy childhoods and ensuring their safety in a world where such intensive interest in their private lives was commonplace. "How long do you think he was watching them?" Catherine asked, her voice tight with worry. The security briefing included information about Thompson's detailed notes and photographs spanning several months. The idea that someone had been secretly observing her young children during what should have been private family moments was deeply unsettling. Detective Sergeant Edwards discovered that Thompson's financial troubles were more severe than he had initially indicated. Bank records showed that he owed significant amounts on credit cards and had fallen behind on his rent payments. His desperation had driven him to increasingly risky behavior, including purchasing specialized surveillance equipment that had cost him thousands of pounds he didn't have. The photographs found in Thompson's possession told a troubling story of escalating intrusion. Early pictures were taken from public areas and showed the royal family during official appearances or widely visible activities. However, more recent photographs had been taken from much closer distances and showed private family moments that should never have been captured by unauthorized individuals. One particularly disturbing discovery was a detailed map Thompson had drawn of the palace grounds, marking optimal hiding spots, guard patrol patterns, and sight lines to various windows and outdoor areas where the royal children played. The map showed a level of planning and observation that suggested Thompson had been treating his surveillance activities like a military operation. Prince Louis, meanwhile, was taking his afternoon nap, completely unaware that his simple wave that morning had led to the uncovering of such an extensive invasion of his family's privacy. His small bed was surrounded by stuffed animals and picture books, a stark contrast to the serious discussions taking place in security offices throughout the palace complex. The legal proceedings against Thompson would likely take months to resolve, but the immediate impact on palace security was swift and comprehensive. New surveillance detection equipment was installed throughout the grounds, additional patrols were established, and protocols were updated to ensure that such extensive unauthorized observation could not occur again without detection. Detective Inspector Morrison completed his preliminary report as the sun set over London. The day had begun with what seemed like a routine security alert and had evolved into the discovery of one of the most sophisticated, unauthorized surveillance operations the Royal Protection Team had encountered. The speed and efficiency of the response had prevented what could have become an even more serious breach of royal privacy. Thompson would eventually plead guilty to multiple charges related to stalking and unauthorized surveillance. His expensive camera equipment would be confiscated permanently, and he would face significant fines along with a restraining order preventing him from coming within a mile of any royal property. The tabloid newspapers that had purchased his previous photographs would also face investigation for their role in encouraging such invasive behavior. The incident became a case study in royal protection training programs, highlighting both the importance of constant vigilance and the unpredictable ways in which potential threats could be discovered. Prince Louis's innocent gesture had led to the resolution of a security breach that might otherwise have continued for months or even years. As the palace settled into its evening routine, Prince Louis played happily with his toys, building towers with wooden blocks and making up stories about brave knights and magical castles. His parents watched him with a mixture of love and renewed awareness of the challenges they faced in protecting their children's innocence while living in the constant spotlight of public attention. The little prince would grow up never fully understanding the significance of that morning when he raised his hand to wave at a stranger in the garden. His natural kindness and politeness had inadvertently triggered a chain of events that protected not only him, but potentially other members of his family from ongoing invasion of their privacy. In the world of royal security, even the smallest gestures can have the most unexpected and significant consequences.